How long was the whole restoration? About 2 years?
It was over two years in the end, just over. It was originally meant to be 18 months, and it took 28 months basically. My name was Simon Thompson. I was the executive director on the project. I started from day one, going out to tender with the teams, setting the teams up, and went from tender process to handover. And I specialised in the interior fit out, QA, QC of the project, and dealing with the client's team based in Doha, in Qatar, and the team here. Originally it was a RAFFLES Hotel, and then it went under different management with Accor, and we oversaw that sort of change as well. And dealing a lot of the times with the building contractors and the project management teams and the various different design teams to ensure quality control was kept throughout the whole project for the different packages.
Great.
I'm Dennis Chan. I'm the project director for this RAFFLES Hotel project. I came in and took over the project at the time when it was just about awarded to the contractor, came on to just before it came on site. So I was managing all of the contracts, as the construction as well as the preservation, conservation, restoration of all the various architectural aspects. And also with the help of the structural engineers, the structural restoration of some parts of it, especially some of the older parts, which is very interesting and which I can elaborate for you as we go along.
So one of the big things I noticed, did they do in-room check-ins before the restoration, or is that something new?
They did for some clients, not everyone. What actually happened was we repositioned the arrival experience. Originally, when you came into the hotel, you checked in straight away at the entrance.
Sure.
So it got pushed back further, and one of the key decisions was this is an upper luxury hotel, and it's quite a big hotel. It's expanded over multiple areas. So they wanted the staff to bring you to the room and then go through that process. So it was a fundamental change in some ways. Some guests still like to check in traditionally, but normally they bring you to the room, which is that elevated experience because it's a butler hotel, it's a full suite hotel.
It's quite nice. Did that affect the design of the lobby at all?
It was part of the process. So as I said, we repositioned the arrival experience, and at the moment where the writer's bar, that used to be an administration wing, that beautiful corner.
Right.
So that was where we had I think it used to be a meeting room and some admin areas, and we repositioned that into the actual writer's bar as such, because that used to be out in the lobby. So yeah, it was a change, and then we started looking at the technology that would allow for that. So the guest room management system, GRMS, we spent a lot of time with the owners and the operators developing that process so everything could be automated from, if you wish, it can be done from the car all the way through to your room and all the way back again.
That's great. So along those lines and the other structural upgrades, were there any other sort of modern updates that involved modern technology?
All the technology was changed.
Okay.
Every bit. If you're actually looking in one of the rooms, you'll see a massive selection of power, data, in-room technology. One of the key elements we wanted to do when we refurbished the hotel was to improve the experience without the guests realising it's been improved. We don't want to make it showy. This is a beautiful heritage building, so you want people experience the building it was meant to be, but bring modern technology to improve the experience. So for instance, we spent a lot of time improving the double glazing. So actually the glazing systems are existing glazing units, but then we've embedded new glazing into it and clad the old system around it. So the aesthetics are exactly as they were, but we have very good acoustics because that was one concern.
Right.
We introduced blackout because a lot of upper luxury guests like to experience complete blackout in the guest rooms.
Yeah.
And obviously with buildings like this, there's a lot of height, a lot of light coming in. So we have a hidden technology that does complete blackouts with hidden blind systems as well. And the guests can have a complete control of their room from the two iPads in the room experience as well.
Yeah.
So you can control the sound, the technology, the guest room entertaining, the order online. There's loads of information about the city and the hotel as well.
Wow, that's exceptional.
So with the exception of the interface, right, everything else you don't see. You know, and that was one of the particularly difficult things because this is not just a heritage building; it's a Singapore monument.
It's a national monument.
Yeah, it's a national monument. So whatever we did, the difficulty is it's like you have to be so careful on where you can hide things, where you can punch holes, but yet
Yeah.
everything else has to look, restored and preserved.
So actually one of the key items we kept was the original guest room controls, which these beautiful, used to be brass and Bakelite switches, the manual switch control. We then introduced modern technology, so the guest still has the look and the feel of the old switches. So that twist, but hidden behind it is all the technology. And that was quite a complex process because it's not enough to peg the item in to get it bespoke made, go for the statutory testing, etc. But that was one of the key things is when we first came in the hotel, in the presidential suites and the suites, you used to have all the ringers, which we called the staff. You go into a great gentrified house, you used to have the bell, it'd pull and someone would be told they want my tea.
Lines.
Yeah, right.
So we wanted that heritage to be kept, but just brought up to date with technology.
Yeah.
So there were some of the fun parts to keep that we were really keen. And so was the owner says, we don't change it. We don't want stick buttons. We want people to experience that touch, that tactile element. It's really important with these sort of things.
Right, not a change, just an update.
Yeah, it's the same product with new technology.
So you had mentioned that it's a national monument. Was the government involved at all in that? Did they have any design say or?
They were very much involved, but not so much from the design standpoint. It's a lot to do with the heritage, the investigations. For example, before you start, we started up this project. We would have investigated all of the materials, the finishes, the paints, put them all on record. Even when we opened up, the old ceilings and so on and so forth, whatever we discovered above the ceilings, very interesting old brick cornices, which were already hidden, for example.
Right.
So they would require all of that to be recorded, photographically, preserved, and then later on, for posterity, obviously. And then later on, whatever we did in terms of bringing back in ceilings and so on, it's still up there. So it's recorded, it's preserved. So there are quite a lot of aspects of preservation, conservation, and restoration. So three key aspects, and then of course, finally we have the new interventions. For example, the BBR and so on, which have quite modern interiors. But from the heritage standpoint, this building is what makes it unique and what to me is outstanding.
There were two areas they wouldn't move on. Was the flooring in the main lobby. We originally looked at changing the flooring pattern to introduce some different marble materials and to sort of bring it up maybe more luxurious. They were insistent that we do like for like, and we then started having discussions. Actually, this particular marble is known in Southeast Asia to be a little bit porous. Eventually, the iron content starts to go yellow.
Okay. Wow.
That was non-negotiable. We want what was originally there preserved and brought back. So actually, we couldn't preserve that material, so we had to duplicate it. So there was a photographic survey done, and every piece was measured, dimensioned, and copied and duplicated exactly. So that's why you'll see some oddities sometimes in the floor mats going, why did we do that? That's an exact copy of what was usually there with new material.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's what you got to do with an old structure like this.
And that was one item that the concept designers who were working with were a little bit stickly on. They really wanted to change, as did the owner. But again, it's kind of nicer to preserve that. The biggest problem is the upkeep of that model.
Yeah, and sometimes with these old the imperfections are the best parts. That's what makes it feel authentic.
Yeah, it's handmade.
Yeah, exactly.
So you'll see the personality of the artisans from years ago brought into a building.
And
I think
another aspect is the roof tiles.
Yeah.
These are very old school, very traditional V-shaped roof tiles. So as part of the preservation effort, every piece was removed, taken away, cleaned, and replaced.
Oh wow, that sounds time consuming.
Nothing new.
Yeah.
The only ones that were new were the ones that are broken. and then we had to source very small quantity just to replace the new ones.
Yeah.
So that was the effort there in terms of how this building needed to be preserved.
Yeah, that's impressive. I think if I'm correct, the number of rooms increased from 103 to 115.
Yeah, we
there.
increased the key count. We've introduced some additional rooms over in what used to be the retail promenade. We have long stay rooms there, and then we converted some of the office space. There used to be offices in the corner wings of the main building as you come in. We converted them into suites as well, and they're beautiful suites. I think they're my preferred spaces because you've got massive height and you've got this beautiful view on the South Beach. So yeah, we increased the key count. The original planning permission for this building actually at one point included converting the garden. Had planning permission for over 100 keys, I believe, many years ago when it was originally built. But the owners decided that just wouldn't be appropriate, taking that beautiful green space and converting it into more
That's
keys.
the 91,
91
project, not
project.
ours, not this current.
That keeping it the way it is definitely vibes with Singapore's current,
Yeah.
the outdoor spaces and the green spaces.
But it's really unique. I can't think of many hotels around the world where you've got this huge quantum of landscape,
Right.
sort of enclosed within the spaces. There's not many projects like this, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a lovely courtyard as well.
Yeah.
Did any of the other social spaces change?
We moved some elements. We moved, for instance, one of the key strategies we had was we moved the museum shop. It used to be very close to the main entrance, and we pushed it onto Sear Street. And the key issue with that was we wanted to create a separate entrance for the visitors coming in. There's a lot of tour groups come in to walk around the hotel. And obviously when you're elevating the guest experience for luxury guests, sometimes there's a bit of a clash there. So we wanted to change that part of the space. We introduced some additional restaurant spaces and sort of made some modifications to the Courtyard restaurants that sort of elevated a little bit to where it was. But largely the landscape areas were kept as is, really. We did look at some plans in early stages of coming up with some wild ideas, but the sensible option is to preserve the beautiful landscape, bring it up to date.
Right.
And a huge emphasis was trying to keep the trees wherever possible, keep them where they are.
Those aren't new.
There's some new ones and some old ones. Wherever they were possible to be kept, they were kept. It was only for the end of the lifespan they were decided to be taken away.
In fact, these ones, I think, 50, 60, 100 years,
Wow.
various locations, especially the ones along Beach Road, are very mature.
And I suppose one of the other big enhancements was the facade lighting was changed. That was a
Oh,
big
yes,
element,
yes.
which the government were heavily
Actually,
involved with.
You might
That took
consider one of
forever.
the capturing some of the night scenes. That's the nighttime facade lighting is new.
Is it more to show everything off and kind of highlight?
Oh yes, absolutely. The heritage facade, very much emphasizing that.
That was a process as well. Went through multiple meetings.
And of course,
with
it's
authorities.
the building being what it is, the monument that it is. We can't, install lights helter skelter all over the place. They have to be very unobtrusive.
A little bit
And
tasteful
yet,
as well.
and yet create that sense of, heritage and grandeur, really, especially for the lobby block.
You had mentioned, Simon, the restaurants. Can you talk a little bit about those? Were those new concepts or
That
updates?
was the restaurants was one of the big fundamental change from the owner. Qatar Hospitality own a number of the top hotels in the world, and they have a very good understanding of fine dining. So one of the key elements when we approached it was we need to elevate the dining experience, bring something completely new. So originally we had the tiffin room, which is the classical tiffins, the Indian lunch, dinner. It's basically the equivalent of the all-day dining, the free meal restaurant. So that was always the heritage of Raffles. So we'll keep the tiffin room. There used to be another restaurant, which is where Madame de Pic is now. That used to be a sort of fine dining French, and the idea was to bring Sophie de Pic, who's a Michelin 3-star chef, to bring her food in and elevate not just the dining room, but the dining experience. What is now the butcher's block used to be connected to the writer's bar, which it still is, and then that was elevated into an upper luxury steak restaurant. So that now has beautiful meat curing spaces. And then you've got the BBR, which used to have the big billiard tables and wasn't used every day of the week. So that was now turning it into a destination restaurant, something very, very bespoke.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Yi restaurant, which is Zhu Long, another Michelin star chef coming in, bringing, elevating again into upper luxury Chinese food as well. So those key elements, those key partners were really here to bring the food to date. And the other big change was the writer's bar. The writer's bar originally was hidden away as a freestanding table, really. It wasn't really a destination.
Right.
So by creating that little corner now, we have a beautiful destination bar that's very unique and a very bespoke, tailored experience. And again, a lot of time is spent on how to make the best drink, how to make the best food. So it's really tailored for the guest experience.
That's great. I've definitely noticed each has a very unique look and feel, and while all still part of the same overall.
But that's the hardest thing sometimes, I think, for designers, is how you preserve the building and don't over-design.
Right.
So the beauty of this building is the alignments. You know, most classical architecture, colonial architecture works on alignment and perspective and proportion. And the designers were told not to change that, really. You know, bring something new within it, but don't change the architectural alignments, and that's why it
You've got
works
to bring
well.
a lot of respect to it.
Yeah.
Long bar as well, not forgetting.
The Long Bar we didn't change too much because it's an icon of Singapore. What people don't know is
Long Bar's perfect. I love
It's
I
moved.
love Long Bar.
So the brief on that was to open up as quickly as possible.
Right.
Because it's an incredibly busy destination. And what we did with that was we really improved the quality of the back of house areas, so that now we have really distinct the ability to make a real proper Singapore slang, those sort of drinks. Before they were sort of a little bit mass market, to be honest, but now it's all tailored, and you see the artisans making the
Or
drinks.
the cocktail.
Yeah, it was
bar
largely their
experience.
technology,
Sure.
MEP, all those sort of elements. We changed the entrance slightly because we noticed we were having a problem with pigeons flying into the building, little things like that.
For the peanuts.
Yeah, so the peanuts have to stay.
Yeah.
So we changed the entrance slightly, and that just improved the flow of the building a little bit. We brought one of the billiard tables back into that space as well. So now there's almost two distinct elements. You've got the lower level, which is the bar, and the upper level is becoming more like a boutique destination where you have the table, and they can operate that slightly
And then
different
you
as
see
well.
the old spiral staircase.
Yeah, the fans.
Connecting the
Yeah.
two levels. Yeah.
The fans, we tried to keep the original ones, but unfortunately they were past their life, so we found a company that manufacture the original product, and it's a duplication of the original one. The original used to be controlled by a man on a bicycle, so it's a bit more updated now. It's using electricity, but it's following the same principles, because you can't change that. Some elements are iconic, and that's an iconic bar, so we have to keep it.
Certainly. If you guys had a checklist of things to consider when doing a restoration of this scale and significance, what do you think a few of the main points would be?
Time.
Wow.
More time, always, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time spent finding artisans. I think finding the right, not contractor, but specialist contractors
Sure.
is quite hard. And time for doing lots and lots and lots of mock-ups. I must have gone to, I would say, over 50 factory visits doing mock-ups, first of types, and it's really, really important. And luckily our client understood that, was happy for the whole design teams to go out and do these inspections and these processes. Some clients don't, and they don't realise that to get it right takes a huge amount of practice with contractors. Down to even these chairs that we were sat in, we must have remade these about 6-7 times to get them just proportionally right. You know, minor changes, pushing things 10 mil, 15, 20 mil here and there, making sure the leg depth is exactly right. With the right tilt. So there's the process of building it, refining, refining. Yeah, which is the key element, I think.
For me, the restoration aspect, I think, was the most fascinating and the most educational for me. Investigating the existing condition of the building, finding all sorts of surprises. You know, salt contamination of the foundations and rotting wood and so on and so forth.
Right.
And then bringing in the restoration and the treatments and processes to the whole thing. So again, yeah, the client was, obviously acutely aware that this is a monument building and it needs to be properly restored. Like Simon's visits to factories, we have to revisit over and over again each round of, for example, salt decontamination of the foundations. We open up, go under the building, investigate the foundations, began to apply some of the current available chemistry and technology for the removal of salt without disturbing the foundations.
And was there any work to prevent that from happening in the future?
Yes, of course. After the removal of salt, we then pumped in liquid damp-proof membranes. So that is the conservation aspect, right? So first we had the restoration effect, take away the salt, and then
I think one of the problems originally when they did the refurbishment back in 1991, the
technology didn't exist.
The paint they used as well didn't allow the building to breathe. So when we removed the paint, we then discovered it had rotted underneath the bricks and contaminated that. So that process of going back to the original materials at the time actually is usually the best way. I think the other big item is adaptability, because as architects and designers we have a set of drawings and we try and adhere to them. But when you've got old buildings, there's stuff unknown always,
Right.
And you have to change and you have to look at it, you have to make amendments to plans and to that to accommodate site conditions sometimes.
Sure.
So, and that's the key element, is that adaptability, I think.
I think that leads perfectly into my next question, which was just the product selection process and kind of walking that line between authenticity, adaptability, but the upgrades that you guys were going for. Can you talk a little bit about the products?
Well, if it was part of the restoration, the facade, it was always authentic. It was always following the national monument. There's certain guidelines set on the paint, for
Authentic
instance.
and bespoke at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
bespoke. So for instance, we would use limescale paints, those sort of elements.
So all of the white, especially
The millwork was a restoration, so we were, if it was damaged, we had to do an exact duplication. So those proportions were always copied, they were scanned, brought back in. And then when it comes to interior fit-outs, materials, for instance the timber flooring, wherever possible we kept the existing flooring.
Yeah.
And if we couldn't, what we did was we found a very good contractor who then could duplicate similar, and we moved some of the timber around, because what we didn't want was the old timber and the new timber in the same space. You would never get a colour match. And what's quite unique about the hotel is, there could be up to 3-4 centimetres difference in that level of the corner to this level of corner because of the elements, because of the building technology at the time. And that's quite unique, and that's quite beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's nice.
the best
So,
part, yeah.
one of the big
One
problems
floor.
in Southeast Asia is contractors will just want to give you a perfectly aligned floor. And so we like this.
Yeah.
So please, let's work with it. So wherever possible, we kept it. If there were cases where we couldn't keep all the floor, we would take that and put it with another unit of the existing period of timber, and then a new unit would have all new flooring. So there's that process of moving things around a little bit wherever possible. For instance, the swing doors in the guest rooms, they're all originals as well. So there's lots of elements we kept and preserved. And when it comes to interior fit out, you're looking at top quality brands as well, where there's an understanding of quality control.
Of course.
Beautiful solid brass baths, this sort of they were brought into the project because there's artisans involved in making those products. So, yeah.
Was there anything you wanted to do but couldn't, for logistical reasons or
I
time?
wanted to use the excess airflow into the Courtyard Garden. At one point, I thought the Courtyard Garden is beautiful, but we're in the tropics here. It's hot, it's humid, so it's quite hard sitting out. And people come to Raffles, they generally dress up, want to sit out. but after 10 minutes you're sweating.
It's the biggest
you're
problem in
soaking.
Singapore.
So I
Yeah.
had the idea in my head that we might be able to take that air and then pump it back out through the floor and drop the ambient temperature 3-4 degrees. But it was logistically a little bit hard because of cutting through the existing board, and it was quite expensive. But I think it would have changed that experience, the ability to sit out in the garden in Singapore and not feel too hot and sweating is quite nice, you know.
Right.
So that would have been something I think would have made that space really bespoke and different.
For me, it's that same space as well. You're talking about Raffles Courtyard.
Yeah.
I remember in the early stages of planning, the Raffles Courtyard has 2 cast iron pavilions, and the client wanted to rotate them 90 degrees.
Right. I don't know if it was the client or us, the designers wanted to rotate them.
So there was this entire effort got into studies about how to rotate, lift this up, turn it around, and reposition it. Yeah. So that was one of the things that didn't happen. In the end, we actually found the technology to do it, but I suppose at the end of the day, it wasn't decided that it wasn't worth the cost and the effort.
Right.
And potential risk.
And risk, of course,
There was
yeah.
risk, yeah.
Because it was a very intricate cast iron assembly. Beautiful thing with all the moldings and cast iron moldings and clay tiles and everything. So at the end of the day, it stayed where it was.
Thank you both for taking the time to speak to me today. Dennis, Simon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah.